And I certainly fell into a lot of connections with people who like could tell I was compassionate, could tell I was supportive, and were like, how can I drain this source dry? And I would be like, well, if you pay a little bit of attention to me, I'm in heaven. So if I could tell my young self something, it would be like, well, you know, like those people will be a detriment and a distraction. Just learn how to be alone.
Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Not jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. With Rudy Tyburczy.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the pod. Jokes and the Gym with Rudy Tyburczy. This is episode 55. We're doing another one. My goodness, we're keeping this going. And this week is kind of a quick week for me. There's a lot going on. I got a lot going on at work. I got a lot going on at home. I got a lot going on in my own life. So this week I've had to juggle some things around and move some stuff here and there. And there's a few things I wanted to talk about today before I get into some former guests. I'm really excited about my guests I'll get to revisit today. Dan Telfer, Kelly Brassbridge, and Sabrena Contreras. 3 wonderful people that I'm excited to listen to again and hear from our conversations. And in the meantime, just to lead up to that, I wanted to talk about a couple things this last week that are relevant to me. And one of those things was a hilarious topic of mentorship. I think it's important that we have mentors in our life. I think I want resources in my life. I want to be able to talk to people that are helpful and have been where I'm at and are doing things that I admire and appreciate and enjoy. And that's one of the reasons why I do the podcast, is so I can learn from people with more experience than me, who have a lot to, or from people who don't have more experience than me. That's not a requirement to learn from somebody. They don't have to have more experience than you at all. And so it's been fun to learn and talk and chat and connect with people of all different sorts. And so I watch others as well. I watch some podcasts or some fitness YouTubers and stuff like that, just to try to get better at the things that I do. And because I suck. No, I do not. I don't. And I don't even like making that joke. I don't even like making those jokes. That's just not where I'm tilted. And I don't think it's a good way to start my day. I don't think it's a good way to start your day. To insult you? To smack you around? No, I don't like that. Some people do. Some people appreciate being kind of like pushed around a bit. And sometimes you might, it also depends on the context. You might have somebody who's good at kind of choking your chain. Is that the right pushing your buttons? That's better. But one of my YouTubers that I like, his name's Joe Drake. He has an Axiom fitness company that he helps trainers become better trainers and get certified to become trainers as well. So I've been watching his stuff over the past year or so since I've been on my trainer journey, and he's been a great resource. And I've really liked his content and his programming. Well, not his programming, because I haven't purchased any of his programming, but I really like his content on YouTube and the other outlets I've seen as well. And so I was watching one of his videos, and sometimes when you watch videos of people that you admire, when you're on a path, when you're trying to make something happen and they're giving advice, sometimes it really hits home. And sometimes it feels like I was watching some of his stuff. And this last video about qualification versus certification that I saw him make, which raises some interesting points for sure. And some of it, I was like, oh, wow, that's relevant. That he could be talking to me. Sometimes it feels like he's about to say Rudy, And at the end of the video, he was like, well, if you're still watching, he didn't say Rudy. If you're still watching, get in touch with me. Contact me. Send an email or even book a call. And then he put up a little sheet where he said you could book a call with him. And so I did it and booked a call. There was a 15-minute slot available the next day. And so I said, let's do it. And we chatted for 15 minutes. It was awesome. And hopefully we'll be able to chat more in the future. He might even be interested in being on the pod sometime, which would be awesome. But just the idea of having someone or a group of people that you can reach out to and you have questions on the way is so valuable. And so that's like I said, part of why I do the podcast. So I have a wealth of friends in the comedy industry, and I'm fortunate that they're willing to spend time just chatting and hanging out and sharing their thoughts and ideas and experiences with me and bullshitting. And so it's been delightful to be able to do that for the past year, and it's really delightful to be able to revisit, and I'm excited to find someone that I can reach out to potentially more, whether that's Joe or not. It's part of the process. And there's a lot of people on the podcast that I've really appreciated that I do look up to one way or another, whether it's like in some mentorship capacity or just as like a friend, as somebody that I chat with now and again. So I'm really excited about what that could bring, and I'd like to do it a little more intentionally moving forward. This year, I'm not doing as many podcast interviews, but because I'd like to not have as much pressure on them, because being under the gun, the timer, every single week was a lot. And so now that my job is cranking up, I'm getting more clients, I'm getting more things going on, I have to find some systems that work better for me. And this is one of them, just kind of doing the recap episodes, talking about my week, things that I may have learned as a new trainer, as an old comedian. I'm old. I'm 41. Is 41 old? I don't know what people think. Some people think 41 is old. Other people think it's young. So when you say anything about your age to anyone, anywhere, someone is going to give you shit for it. Just be ready for that. I'm 41. I don't necessarily look it. That's what most people are surprised. A new client last week guessed 32, 33, that kind of thing. That's usually what I get, and that's about what I get. So cool. I guess that's cool. I guess I'm doing a decent job of taking care of myself, and I appreciate that. And it's because, in part, I listen to the opinion and advice of other people. That's how I've gotten in shape, and in addition to listening to my body and just being consistent. So I'm excited to kind of move forward in that realm, and I might even look to do it in comedy as well. So we'll see kind of what happens going forward, but I need to find some way to be more efficient with my time, because scheduling is getting hectic. It is getting a bit more. I do have somewhere in this 5 to 10 client range right now at work, and a lot of the job is just scheduling. It's just scheduling. It's just getting people in the calendar. It's knowing when you have available, when is booked, staying on top of that, getting those systems in place. And I have a physical calendar. I have a physical copy of a calendar because the phone just kind of feels a little too fleeting. Putting it in my phone is not a bad idea, but I think I need to see it and touch it a little bit more. There's, of course, then always room for user error and my freaking screw ups. But I think also just kind of like really staying on top of it and having a book that I can use has been helpful for me. And with weeks like this where my first few days of the week are kind of packed, and I'm going on a trip out of town this weekend and all kinds of stuff, scheduling becomes even more important. And as boring as that is, what's really helped me this week was last night on Sunday. I just took some time to go over the week, or at least these next few days, because I know I have a couple hectic days, and I just want to be prepared at the very least. So I did some stuff around here. I did a little cleaning, a little tidying up, a little prep work for the podcast, I got together the interviews I'm going to look at, even if I didn't listen to them, because I'm going to do that here today. I like to kind of listen to them in real time on the podcast with you, and because that's fun to me. And I like to be able to reflect honestly and in the moment. I think that's interesting. And so, yeah, I'm just really trying to get those systems in order, my scheduling systems in place. And I'd like to get better at it. I'd like to have a more definite and accessible and user-friendly system, because I gotta share a lot of information myself via email right now. And so we'll see how it goes moving forward. But I'm glad that I have taken some time to be doing those things, thinking ahead of time, looking at my schedule for the week, trying to get shit done in a reasonable manner so that I don't go crazy. How's that sound? Not going crazy? That sounds good to me. I like that idea. Because another thing that I've put on my plate this year is the daily exercise of the days that I'm putting out, usually on TikTok, Jokes and the Gym. Follow us there, the royal us. It's just me and a guy who makes a podcast. But Jokes and the Gym on TikTok, I'm doing an exercise of the day. You'll get the fuller video there. But I'm also most days putting a little clip of it on the stories on the gram, both Jokes and the Gym and my own Rudy Tyburczy. So check out those. Check out the exercise of the day. It's been something that was just I thought of it on the first day of the year, and kind of inspired by Gary Gulman. You know, he did that joke tip of the day. He did the comedy tip of the day for a few years back, and that was a huge deal for him. He was, and so many people benefited from those, and I'll still even look at some of those sometime. There were so many that were so powerful, and it was cool. So I just wanted to do a little something to keep myself on track. I built the track, right? I put the track in place. It's like, okay, one exercise every day, exercise of the day. And I think I might do like the first 100 days in a row, and then I might take weekends off, because again, it's a super big endeavor. But we'll see how it goes, and I'm okay with it changing shape. That's something that I'm learning to accept, acknowledge, because you know, the year's going to be busy one way or another. There's going to be plenty of stuff to do. We always got a life. We always got things. We always got stuff, you know? And so I just want to be a little better prepared. I want to be able to face these things. I want to be able to do these things that I love with energy, with conviction, with joy. I've been thinking a lot about the word that I want to use this year, and one of the words that I've been pondering is compassion, because I don't feel like I always have compassion for myself primarily, and for others as well. It's not like I'm judging people constantly, but I think when I look at things from a compassionate viewpoint, then little things bother me less when I'm coming at it from the perspective of, you know, this is a human being. I don't know where they're coming from. Could be a lot of stuff going on. Could not. Maybe it's just a day and it doesn't even matter. But I want to put my best face forward one way or another. And best is going to change from day to day. Thanks, Don Miguel Ruiz. Always do your best. Your best changes from day to day, moment to moment. So keep that in mind as you move forward, and as you maybe start talking shit about yourself. That's the thing that we all do. We all do it. We talk smack about ourselves. I'm trying to work on. I want to talk about that. That's a fun thing to me. Is how badly we treat ourselves. Why is that fun? I don't know. I think it's fun because it's relevant and it's applicable to most of us. And so there's places for humor within it. Dude, if I treat my friends the way I treat myself in my head, it wouldn't have a lot of friends. And I'm not always talking shit about myself, but I do sometimes, and it slips, and I want to be better about it. And so I'm trying to keep compassion in mind, and started listening to a book, Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff, and that's just a helpful thing to sprinkle throughout my day. Maybe listen to a book like that on the way to work. Or I've been listening to Jefferson Fisher's podcast on the way to work. I love that guy. He talks about communication. He's a lawyer from the South, and just a 15 to 20 minute podcast about 3 tips about how to deal with certain situations in communication. And it's awesome. The Jefferson Fisher podcast. His book is coming out soon. I don't know when. He keeps talking about it. Just release your book, Jefferson. but I'm excited. That's another one of those people I'd love to reach out to, and I've seen him. I saw him on Mel Robbins' podcast. So like, yeah, who knows if he'd be on a podcast like this? But his content, his advice, his input has been super valuable for me. So I used it even. I was gonna have a hard conversation, and I listened to the episode How to Have Difficult Conversations. And I took some of that into account, and I had the conversation, and it went as well as it could have. And later that evening, the person I spoke with was like, I really appreciate how you said that. And so I might have shared that before, but I just think it's relevant because he's one of those people that I can learn a lot from, and I enjoy hearing what he has to say. So I also enjoyed hearing what my guests have to say. And we're going to get into it already. It's okay if these are shorter episodes, 15 to 30 minutes, sometimes 45, an hour. Sorry, it might not be super consistent, but when you put these out all the time, when you got a lot of stuff going on, then sometimes it might be a little shorter, and that's okay. You hear that, everyone? It might be a little shorter. It's okay. It's okay if it's shorter, so don't get mad, okay? All right, I don't think you're getting mad. I think you're like, okay, let's have this 30 minutes, baby. So, those were just some things that I wanted to mention coming into today. I was thinking about it. Those are some topics that are relevant to me and my life at this moment, and I wanted to kind of touch on those things before listening to the advice from our next three guests. Guests on episodes. What episodes were they? 17, 18, 19. 17, Dan. The man Telfer, Dan Telfer, is very funny. He's a D&D campaign writer as well. He's got actually quite a long resume that's impressive, and I really admire Dan. And I was excited that he wanted to be on the pod, and it was really a good chat. It was really a good chat, worth listening to the whole episode. He gave a lot of good input, a lot of information on somatic healing and work, talked about books a lot and D&D. So if you're interested in any of that, be sure to check out episode 17 with Dan Telfer. And in the meantime, we're going to check out that final answer with Dan, and we're going to see if he phones a friend. That final question of what advice would you give your younger self with Dan Telfer.
What advice would you give your younger self? Like starting with comedy, it could be comedy related, health related, whatever. Or what do you wish you knew when you were starting out or had focused on?
I would say that it is way more important to be alone than you think it is. I would say, I spent a lot of time just alone as a kid, and thought like part of the appeal of being an adult was just to throw myself into connections and groups. But I think your connections with other people, as important as they are, need to be based in a solid sense of self and independence. And so I think I would tell myself, hey, like, you don't actually, need other people the way you need yourself. I think I would be like, there's a real consequence to abandoning yourself. So focus on how not to do that before throwing yourself into connections with certain people.
Yeah. I love that. And it's easier said than done. A lot
Indeed.
of times comedy is easy to get swept up in. It's easy to go up and down in the whole ride, have the drinks, do the parties, meet the people. And so taking time to be alone, I think people get on stage because they're uncomfortable being alone sometimes. If we want to get into it.
Absolutely. But I think also just like dating, I think there's a lot of people who want your attention because they want to exploit it. And I certainly fell into a lot of connections with people who like could tell I was compassionate, could tell I was supportive, and were like, how can I drain this source dry? And I would be like, well, if you pay a little bit of attention to me, I'm in heaven. So if I could tell my young self something, it would be like, well, like those people will be a detriment and a distraction. Just learn how to be alone.
Yeah. Words of wisdom from Dan, the giving tree Telfer.
Oh, no. Yeah, don't be the tree. Don't be the tree.
Right on, Dan. Well, thank you so much for hanging out a little bit today.
Yeah, really my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Rudy.
Yeah, totally, dude.
Oh, yeah. Dan Telfer coming off the top rope with the wisdom. Learn to be alone, dropping it. I love it. That's an important thing to consider when you get into comedy. And as you continue with comedy is, you know what? There's a lot of times where you're going to be alone. A lot of times on the road, it's just you. Maybe you're in a hotel or sleeping on a couch or taking a dump in a state park. You're doing a lot of things by yourself on the road as a comedian, and not just on the road, but in your day-to-day, in your everyday, in your life. There's plenty of time spent on your own. And as he said, as well as Dan said, a lot of people will try to exploit your attention and the fact that you care. So if you care, if you're a compassionate person, then you're also going to have to make sound decisions. You're going to also have to decide whether or not this is a good thing for you. So if you're caring for others, if you're compassionate for other people, and if you want to be healthy, then you're going to have to cut some things out as well. So I think that's a really important thing to consider. That's something that I've kept in mind as well, is because sometimes it does feel like a solitary endeavor, and you have to be okay with that. And I like being alone, actually. If I'm honest, I don't hate it. I can't be only alone. I can't be just alone. I need community. I like being part of community. But you know what? Being around other people drains my battery. And not in a bad way necessarily. Sometimes it's a bad way, but most of the time it's just like I need time to recuperate. I have a job where there's more than 18,000 members at the Y. There's people that come in every day and ask me for a lot of weird stuff. And I just got to go with it. And so at the end of the day, I'm going to need some time to recoup. I'm going to need some time to recover. And the same is true for like a good show. Sometimes after the show, you got the juices flowing. You're excited to keep going. Let's have some fun. And other times it's like, ooh, that was fun. I'm glad it's over. Let's go relax. I want to just drink some tea and watch a movie. That sounds amazing. It's so funny that that's where I tilt these days, is tea and movies. But that's great. That's great. Lean into what you are. Make sure not to disregard social connections, because that's important. It's a basis for human foundations, relationships. So I'm excited that I do appreciate those words, and I hear them, and I'm like, yeah, I can learn to be alone. That's a good thing. It's okay to be alone, and it's okay to take solace in that too. So that was great. Dan, love Dan. Dan Telfer's awesome. Check him out. Hire him. Put him on your shows. He's the best. My next guest is a friend I made in Korea. I was on his podcast in Korea, Kelly Brassbridge. And he was a freestyler. He's a comedian. He was a podcaster. All kinds of things we shared. We had a lot of fun together in our days in Korea. And he moved back to the state of Maine, where he's from, and is a teacher, working as a teacher. And so it was fun to catch up. It was a lot of fun to catch up. And I'm excited to hear what his advice was to his younger self. So let's dig into it. Kelly Brassbridge, baby. If you could tell your early comedy self any piece of advice, or if you could have known anything back in the day, what do you wish it would be?
I wish I could have I don't know if I would still struggle with it today. So if I were to get back, I just want to be in the moment a little more and be a little more like on my feet, and like instead of reciting something, the best times I've ever had. But I would rehearse a lot and practice a lot, but I never got out of like, I was like, okay, the more I know this, the more beat for beat I know this routine or this story or this joke, better it's going to be. But then it's not. So loosening up a little bit on stage, looking at the people and really actually engaging with them when the time is right. You know what I mean? Because audience engagement, when you're bantering back and forth, hopefully it's not a heckler, but I was never good with hecklers.
Right.
You know what I mean? Sometimes I was
yucky.
awful with them.
I hate it.
I hate it too. But, some people think that like that's going to improve the show. And it usually does if you hold your own at all.
If you know how to deal with it.
The audience is going to be on your side first, unless they already hate you.
Right.
And then you're not going to win because they already don't like you. But if they like you or they want you to succeed, they definitely don't like the heckler. So if you have any way that you can engage with that person and then, and still like have control, without like freezing and then being like, fuck you, dude, like, which is what I used to do sometimes. Right. And like, I was like, oh, I'm confidently telling this dude off, but I'm not being funny and I'm making everybody uncomfortable.
Totally.
Especially 100%. Myself. Yeah. So I think something that I wish I could have learned going into comedy was just, coming off the book a little bit and just relying on my own ability to not really be scared on stage.
Right. Because you do have a strong presence on stage, and improvisation is a strength of yours. But when you're tossed those curveballs from the audience, it's really hard. And you asked me earlier if I ever think of things I should have said or places to put things in a conversation. Here's what I do. When I get a heckler that I respond to, when I respond to a heckler in a way that I wasn't happy with, and I think about it afterwards, I will try to think of 5 other ways I could have responded. And them exactly like that. But guess what I did? I just thought of 5 alternatives that I could have used to approach that situation differently. And guess what? I'll get that situation again in the future, and I'll be better prepared next time.
Hopefully you can just grab it right from that pouch, and or like one of those 5s might exactly. And that's
nail that quiver, and you're like, and you got it, and you feel so much better, and the audience is on board.
Yes, and it kills, right?
And it kills. It's so much more rewarding than like getting mad and getting in your feelings. And I did. Oh my
God.
Ooh, that was a fun one. I like Kelly. Like I said in the conversation, improvisation is a skill of his too. And so just being more in the moment and having that mindset going into a set, I think can really help you. It's something that's really beneficial. It helps to get the audience, like you said, it helps get the audience on board when you're able to be in the moment, be present, go a little off book, and be comfortable in that. And so that's a fun one as well. Also, that little advice, that little piece, that hint, that tip at the end that I give, as far as like, if you get a heckler that you're not happy with how you responded, go home and think about it. Write 5 different responses you could have done. Write some things that you could have said that you would have been happier with, and see what happens next time. Like, you're not necessarily gonna be saying exactly those things, but having prepared, you'll be more prepared. That's what happens. Like, I thought about recording the podcast today. I thought about my morning today. I thought about doing all the things that I was a little overwhelmed by last night. And so today I'm a little less overwhelmed. It's before breakfast and I'm almost done with the podcast. I'm excited about that. That feels great because I prepared, because I looked back at what's happened before and thought about what I'd like to happen next time. And I changed a bit. So that was a good that was a good bit to listen to. Kelly's a funny guy, a talented guy, and that was good. So I'm excited for our next guest. Oh, Sabrina's one of my good friends. She's so delightful. She's at so many of my shows where I feel good at because she's on my team. She's a supporter. And you need those people in your corners that you know are going to be there for you one way or another. And I feel like that. When I do comedy with her around, I feel better. I'm glad when she's in the room. It makes me feel happy. And then you get a better performance from me. So whenever we have those kind of people in our lives, we got to cherish them. We got to appreciate them. And I hope that you show some love to the folks in your life that make you feel more like yourself. And I hope you're able to spend a lot of time with them because that's friggin' important. You want to spend time with people who make you feel like shit? No, you don't. Or maybe you do. I hope you don't. I don't. But yeah, spending time with Sabrina is always so delightful. And I'm excited to hear what we chatted about in our final answer, our final question. So here, listen to me and Sabrena Contreras.
Totally. I had no tools.
None. Yeah, and then they're like, here, go be a writer.
yeah. Make up something.
Yeah, just make it up. We can always lie. That was the communication that I think a lot of people were brought up with. You can always lie.
Yeah. As long as it's a small enough lie.
Yeah, it doesn't have to change the world. So you've moved to LA. We were in that over an hour mark. And I kind of like to start to wrap up the show by asking, what do you wish that you had known when you started comedy? Or like, if you could talk to young Sabrena, just starting her comedy jazz business, what would you like her to hold on to? What would you like for her to take to heart?
I feel like I still have trouble following this advice as myself, like my present self now, but I think that it's something that I'm always reminding myself and like taking a step back with is like not comparing yourself to other people. Do not compare. Don't look at other people's stuff if it's gonna if it incites like a weird feeling inside of you that isn't excited for the person posting it, then maybe just like avoid and focus on what you're doing because I feel like I fell really hard into that trap, especially when I very first started, like a year in, it just breeds like self-doubt and feeling that like imposter syndrome of like, oh, like maybe I shouldn't even be doing this, or like this person's better, or it even brings up like ugly feelings of like resentment and like getting mad at this other person for having opportunities that you think you should have for whatever reason. And that like it like feels ugly inside. And so I think that is what young Sabrena should know.
And especially for someone like you who wants to see love, you know, and feel love and have that be such a part of your life. That's super important. And it's hard, and it can be hard to do that with social fucking media.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
I think that, when I had gotten here and I had that like month and a half where I wasn't doing comedy and was just like kind of sad, I was on social media so much. And then I stopped. And then, wow, what do you know? I started feeling so much better.
Yeah.
So taking those breaks. I think that that's probably another thing too, is just like taking breaks when you need to, and taking breaks from comedy when like you really just don't feel like doing it. Like don't force yourself to go because it's not going to be fun.
Yeah. That's true. That's something that I've learned a bit more lately as well. I'm trying not to beat myself up over like not going to every mic that I can go to or whatever, because it's like I'm tired. I'm really working on managing my energy as best as I can. And sometimes the 2-hour dedication to a mic and the drive and the prep and the wind down, it becomes a lot more than 2 hours sometimes. And it's maybe hard to, you have a weird interaction. It's hard to go to sleep and you got to work the next day, or you got a thing to do. And so just holding these things with more kindness, and just trying not to be so judgmental of myself.
Yes.
Has been super helpful lately. It doesn't always work, but that's what I'm trying for.
Yeah. How do you do that for yourself? Like how does not looking judgmental look for you?
Part of it is preparation and planning, like looking over a week kind of at a bigger picture standpoint, like saying, okay, I have to prepare for 2 shows and these 3 nights coming up. And so it's like, how can I prepare for that and do all the things I need to do beforehand so I feel confident going into those. And sometimes it might involve going to a mic and trying out a thing, getting it back on its feet, or sometimes it might not, because I need to sleep, because I know I'm going to be a much better comedian if I get an 8 hours night sleep, as opposed to if I went to a mic on Wednesday for 4 minutes that nobody listened to. Right?
That pisses me off. Yeah.
And it's like, so when I, and just taking mics for what they are. They're just mics. They're opportunities to try a little bit. Nothing big is going to happen if you do or don't go. And that's okay. I want to go when I can, and when it sounds fun to me. Does it sound fun to go? Do I have the energy to do that?
Yes.
Will it allow me to have a good day tomorrow? And those are I try to think about tomorrow. I try to think about future Rudy a little more, and try to learn from the stuff that I've done and had not regrets about, but felt sticky about. So just some of that, being a little kinder, doing a little more planning, and being honest about what is needed or not.
Yeah. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Sabrena, it's so fun to talk to you. You always give me so many good juices.
Yeah, you too, Rudy. So happy.
Yeah, it's so great. And I really admire you for taking the leap and going down south and taking the leap and going down south.
Yeehaw, baby.
Oh yeah, ride 'em, cowgirl. It's seriously a huge thing. It's awesome that you're going for it, and I'm always around if you ever want to chat.
Thanks, Rudy. So much fun, and you look so beautiful with your haircut.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it feels nice. It was time for a bit of a change. Doesn't it feel good when you chop something off? Ooh, yeah. So good. It was so nice to see you a couple weeks ago. What a delight. I didn't even know you were in town. And
I know, it was such a sneaky surprise.
Yeah. You little sneaker.
I know.
And that was part of my conversation with Sabrena Contreras. She has her own podcast as well. What's it called? Off the Hook? I think it's called Off the Hook. I'm going to look it up right now and double check to make sure that I'm not screwing up her podcast, giving you the wrong plug. Off the Hook podcast. Yes, Off the Hook pod. Off the Hook _pod on the gram. So yeah, she has her own podcast now with her friend Selena and that's Selena and Sabrena on Off the Hook podcast. So give them a listen. They're delightful and they're fun. And because you can hear how much fun I have with her. So it was and those were great words of advice as well. Try not to worry about whatever every other person is doing. Don't look at it if it doesn't make you feel good. Consider those things. So I really appreciate hearing that perspective, being reminded of that perspective. And then it's funny, right, that she asked about how I show some more kindness to myself. And how do I do that? I prepare. I plan. That way I'm feeling less anxious, less nervous, less overwhelmed. And it's just a good reminder to be kind to ourselves, to think about those different ways. How am I going to be good to myself this week? How am I going to do the things that I want to do? because it's like, there's a lot going on in our lives. You know how many things are out there that are like kind of cool? I want to do a lot of that stuff. And it's hard. And it's hard to figure out how to balance it all, how to prioritize stuff, how to go with your own actual desires and flows. It's like, okay, how am I feeling right now? And listen to that and let that play a role in what you decide to do. If you have that opportunity, if you have that option. I know not everybody can listen to how they feel, right? That's not a luxury that everyone has. So if you're able to take those things into account, then do. Duh. But it was really cool to revisit those conversations today. I really like these 3 guest reboots. Today was awesome. Dan, Kelly, and Sabrena. Oh, such good guests, such good people. And I'm excited to do this again. I got a lot of stuff going on in the next day, next couple of days, and the next week. But we're going to be doing another one of these pods coming out next Tuesday on Rudy Tuesdays, y'all. I'm excited you're here. I thank you for listening. If you're still around, I appreciate you so much. Reach out. If you're listening to this part of the podcast, send me an email on jokesandthegym@gmail.com, or reach out to me on the internet, somewhere in the internet sphere. Sometimes if we're not friends or whatever, contacts, it might go into the spam and I might not see it immediately. But yeah, I'd love to hear from folks, and I appreciate you. I hope you're doing something for your day, for your life, for yourself that feels good. Getting up and doing this felt good. I'm feeling really thankful that I decided to finish this before 9 a.m. because I got a big day ahead of me. I got a lot of stuff to do. I got people to serve. I got work to be worked. And I'm excited to start it off with you. So thank you for jumping in the little wagon and hanging out for a while. I hope you do it again. I hope you do something today that makes you feel good. Tell somebody you appreciate them. Give somebody a hug. Do 10 push-ups if you can. 10 squats. See how that makes you feel. Stretch out a little bit this morning. See what you're doing if what you've been doing isn't serving you. See how you can switch it up a little bit. Do something to get that energy flowing, them juices boosted, and that happiness, joy, presence a part of your day-to-day life. I thank you for making me a little bit of your daily life, or whatever the case may be. If you just listen in the background or whatever, I appreciate that. Tell your friends, enjoy the program, enjoy your lives. I'll see you soon. Ciao.
Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Not jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. With Rudy Tyburczy.
I know, it was such a sneaky surprise.
Yeah. You little sneaker.
I know. But